Alright, welcome to our channel. The American media is currently very interested in China's Dongfeng 31BG. Why? This might be what's keeping them up at night. Take a look at the Dongfeng 61, right? Many people have seen the Dongfeng 61, and you'll notice that its launch vehicle is completely different from the Dongfeng 31BG's launch vehicle. Take a look for yourself. Take a look. Now, the Dongfeng 61's launch vehicle has a front cab, right? It's a complete, proper truck cab. But the Dongfeng 31BG, where the G stands for silo-based Jingji, its vehicle cab is what? It's just a tiny driver's compartment on the far left, with the rest of the space dedicated entirely to carrying the warhead. There's no space for launch personnel to sit, no launch system. In other words, it's not a launch vehicle, it's just a transport vehicle. Got it? The Dongfeng 31BG vehicle, the one that rolled through Tiananmen Square, isn't a launch vehicle. It's a transport vehicle specifically designed to carry the missile. Why does it carry the missile? We'll get to that in a bit. It's designed for easy movement between different sites. Also, didn't China release satellite images of missile silos in the Northwest Desert a couple of years ago? The Americans hyped that up. Why are they so nervous? It's because of this. Those silos house these missiles. Some might ask, what's the strategy here? Let's break down the logic of nuclear weapons. The Dongfeng 31BG's vehicle cab is extremely narrow. If you look closely, if it were designed as a missile launch vehicle, you wouldn't even know where the driver is sitting. You can't see the right side at all. How is it supposed to maneuver? If you're the driver, how do you navigate? You can't see anything on the right, the cab is just on one side. Its appearance, with the cab skewed to one side, makes it impossible to be a vehicle for rugged, cross-country maneuvering. It's just a fixed transport vehicle, a cargo truck, plain and simple. Compare that to the Dongfeng 61, which has a fully designed cab and is a mobile launch vehicle, capable of maneuvering on highways. We've seen the Dongfeng 31AG's launch vehicle before, right? And the 61 as well. But the Dongfeng 31BG is completely different. Its cab is just not the same. In other words, it's not designed for mobile launches. It's for silo-based launches. This design, with the launch canister's complex pipelines exposed, makes it prone to damage. Plus, this vehicle probably isn't easy to turn around. These details show it's not meant for mobile launches in the field. However, it can still be transported by rail, which we'll talk about later. And guess what? The Americans have a similar model. You heard that, right? America has something like this? So, this vehicle is purely for transporting the missile, not for launching it. If you look at it, the launch canister has a long slide rail in the front half, connected to a winch structure at the end. Unlike a mobile launch vehicle, you don't see any support structure at the tail of the canister, just a simple cover, right? This structure confirms that the Dongfeng 31BG is essentially a missile loaded into a silo. It's just a missile that gets towed out by this vehicle. Once the vehicle arrives at the silo, it raises the canister, and using the winch and slide rail, it lowers the missile directly into the silo, completing the loading process. It's essentially a missile loading vehicle. Got it? So, why does China need silo-based missiles? You might say mobile, road-based missiles are better. So why bother with silos? First, let's be clear. The purpose of nuclear weapons isn't just to destroy the enemy or wipe out populations. No country in a war thinks, let's fire all our nukes at once. They always hold back some nuclear weapons. The goal is to deter the enemy from launching their nukes. The idea is to make the enemy hesitate to act. But many don't realize that once a nuclear war starts, no country will launch all its nuclear weapons at once. They'll hold back some for what? To maintain nuclear deterrence in the post-nuclear war world order, in the aftermath of a nuclear apocalypse. You heard that right. After a nuclear war, some countries will cease to exist. No government, no regime, But whoever still has nuclear weapons can dominate the world. Even if everyone's underground and the surface is nuked to oblivion, there is still a hierarchy underground. So, many consider that, in the event of a nuclear strike, they need to preserve their nuclear strike capability to ensure their country's nuclear strength survives. There's no such thing as nuclear bundling, where a major power launches all its nukes at once. That's wasteful. They'll aim to preserve some warheads in a full-scale nuclear war to maintain second strike capability and ensure they still have nuclear deterrence in the post-war world. That's why China builds these silos to preserve its own strength and deplete the enemy's. These silos are built in desert wastelands, uninhabited areas, perfect for depleting the enemy's nuclear warheads. How do you destroy the enemy in the first wave of a strike? That's a key nuclear war principle. In the first wave, the enemy targets all known intercontinental ballistic missile silos, as well as air bases for bombers and submarine bases, to wipe them out. If you can completely destroy a country's nuclear forces, you can eliminate the opponent entirely. Among all nuclear weapon deployment methods, silo-based launches are actually the most stable. The missiles don't need to account for size restrictions like road-based systems do. Some bridges can't handle the weight or size. Silo-based missiles are stored without being subjected to bumps or vibrations. They just sit in the silo. Their trajectories are precisely calculated, relying on inertia for accuracy, minimizing errors, and achieving extremely high precision. But silos are easily spotted by satellites these days, so they're the first targets in a strike. During the Cold War, the US and Soviet Union fought the same way. China's just playing the same game now. For example, the Americans had a similar model to our Dongfeng 3-1BG, not in terms of technology, but in concept. From the 1960s to the 1980s, the US developed the MX Peacekeeper missile. You can look it up. Unlike China's complex underground Great Wall system for moving missiles around, the MX wasn't like that. Its theoretical approach is similar to the Dongfeng 3-1BG. The MX was a solid fuel missile with long range, high accuracy, and multiple warheads. In 1979, President Carter proposed a plan to deploy 200 MX missiles in Nevada and Utah, connected to a network of launch shelters. Note, these weren't silos, they were launch shelters. The idea was that one MX missile would be deployed among hundreds of road-connected launch sites, spaced far enough apart to ensure that a single nuclear warhead couldn't destroy more than one. So, you'd need 200 warheads to hit 200 sites. These shelters were densely packed, each potentially holding a missile, but some were real and some were fake. Only you know the ratio of real to fake warheads. The enemy has to assume the worst and destroy them all. 200 warheads. During that time, the fake MX missiles were constantly moved between sites using special vehicles to avoid revealing their true locations. The real MX missiles, stored in shelters, would roll out and launch a nuclear strike against the Soviets if war broke out. These launch sites were all in uninhabited areas: Utah, Nevada, mountainous regions designed to become depletion zones to exhaust the enemy's nuclear arsenal after a strike. That's why China's building silos in the desert to deplete enemy warheads. By throwing hundreds of missiles at these areas, you avoid hitting my cities. The US deployment was designed to confuse Soviet intelligence, making it impossible to pinpoint the real warheads. Here's the kicker. With just 200 MX missiles, the US estimated it could force the Soviets to expend about 4,600 nuclear warheads. They did the math. If the Soviets wanted to reduce their nuclear arsenal, this plan played a role. The US would only destroy the real missiles but keep the launch sites operational. These weren't silos. They were just infrastructure, right? So, even if you make me reduce my nuclear weapons, I'm not dismantling the launch sites. They stay, continuing to deplete Soviet warheads, 4,600 of them. This made Utah and Nevada prime targets, so both states opposed it. The project was cancelled at the end of Carter's term, but was revived under Reagan in 1982. BMX missiles were then deployed in hardened, long-range missile silos, like China's current silos. Densely packed in uninhabited areas, these smaller targets required direct nuclear strikes, potentially consuming even more warheads, maybe 6,000 instead of 4,600. There was also rail transport involved, which we mentioned. The Dongfeng 31BG might also be linked to rail transport. Later, the MX missile, officially called the LGM-118 Peacekeeper, was deployed in improved Minuteman missile silos without any special survival-enhancing deployment methods. So, how exactly is the Dongfeng 31BG deployed? Is it following the US MX model? Or does China have its own innovations? We don't know. But at the very least, the US would need to hit each silo with the warhead right. Unlike the Dongfeng 5, which is fixed in one silo, these are likely mobile between silos. That means you need specialized transport and loading vehicles. If we go by the US's old calculations, 200 sites requiring 4,600 warheads, that's about 60 to 70% of their nuclear stockpile spent in an uninhabited desert. This is designed to deplete the US's existing missile and warhead inventory. Imagine 4,600 warheads hitting an uninhabited area. It's hard to fathom, but that's the reality. If you don't strike, that area becomes my future nuclear stronghold. You don't know what's real or fake, so you have to hit it. That's why the US is feeling the pressure now.